Okay, and so it's a couple minutes after 1, and we will go ahead and jump on in. So been saying welcome as people come in, but our official welcome to our webinar today, Peer Reviewing Conference Proposals for Sea Change 2018. My name is Nicole, and I'll introduce myself a little further on the next slide as long as the other co-presenters here with me today. For those of you coming in, a warm welcome to all of you from across Canada. Thank you for your time as reviewers and for your time with us on the webinar today. A couple kind of housekeeping notes. Actually, before we do that, for today, I'd like to begin our time together with a short land acknowledgement. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we have folks joining us today from all across Canada. We're all viewing and participating in this webinar on traditional territories of Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We want to recognize their contributions to this place and express our ability to come together and learn today. I'd also like to acknowledge we have a captioner working with us today, Cindy, and would like to recognize the generous support of Caucus by providing captioning services for our webinars. And we're very grateful for the support of ACS in this regard. I'd also like to know everyone on the webinar today that we are recording this session. And so if you are speaking on the line, you'll be part of that recording. To also let you know, a copy of the recording will be available publicly afterwards. And just a couple housekeeping notes. So if you called in on the phone line today, we're going to ask that you actually mute your phone line starting now. We will welcome questions over phone or chat at the end and throughout as well. So the chance to bring you back in. You can give us a little hands up or a note in the chat. So there is an actual raise your hand feature you can use for that, or Megan and Alison are helping us out in the chat box today as well. We'll make sure to get all of your questions addressed by the end of the webinar as well. So again, a very warm welcome. As I mentioned, we have a few folks on the line here today. So my name, as I said, is Nicole Giron, and I'm currently working at York University as a Student Success Coordinator within the Faculty of Health. It's also my third year working with the Program Review Committee. I'm very excited to be co-hosting with my colleague Catherine, who will introduce herself next. I'm excited PEI will be my 8th caucus conference. I'm calling it my Caucus Tour of Canada. And so looking forward to that and to be working with all of you this year. Catherine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Nicole. My name's Catherine Burkirk. I'm the Director of Student Recruitment and Strategic Enrollment Liaison at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, British Columbia. This is my first year working on the conference committee and co-chairing with Nicole for the program review committee. But I did work with Caucus as a research assistant with Karina, who's on the call, and I helped support the competency development. So, and now I'll hand it over to Karen.
Hi, my name is Karen McCready. I am the registrar at Capilano University in North Vancouver, British Columbia. So pretty close to Catherine. We're on mountains facing each other over in Vancouver. I am from Arook. I've been a member of the Arook executive for several years. Have been involved in the Arook conference planning several times, as well as the past president of the Western Association of Arook, and have run conferences for them for the past, I think, 3 conferences. So looking forward to this opportunity to come together with Caucus.
Great, thanks. And Alison. Yep.
Yeah, my name's Allison. I'm the conference manager. PEI and Charlottetown will be my 5th caucus conference, my first Arook caucus conference. So I'm very excited to collaborate with another organization this year. I think we're bringing some really unique ideas to the conference, and you're going to see that reflected in some of the joint proposal submissions that everyone on the call will be reviewing in the next few weeks. I'm your point person. for anything related to the conference. I will be sending out all the communications. If you have any questions, and of course all conference logistics are centralized through the caucus office and will come from me. So you'll be hearing lots from me in the next few months. Welcome, everybody.
As our last co-host, Sherry, unfortunately, has managed to catch the bug that's been going around. So we hope all of you are happy and healthy today. And we give a shout out to Sherry as one of the members of our program review committee. So this next slide is just an overview of what we'll be covering with you today. So we would like to, first of all, make sure we're giving you a very warm welcome and thank you for all of the work that you're contributing as reviewers to this process. We'd like to give you an overview of the more kind of logistics of what the review process looks like. We'll spend some time going through some tips for reviewers and highlighting some things from the reviewer tip sheet. Make sure you feel equipped to get going. We'll also give you a preview of the reviewer system and kind of highlight some areas of that new technology this year. We'll talk a little bit about the upcoming conference and expand on the exciting partnership that Alison mentioned as well between Caucus and Abruk for this year's 2018 conference. And lastly, we'll share a couple notes around what happens in the review process after you finish your review, and then kind of wrap up our time together. As we said, we'll also try to leave lots of time for questions as well. So throughout the areas we're going to cover with you today, we're hoping that by the end that you'll be comfortable with the different resources that we've prepared and have available for you, that you'll feel familiar and comfortable with the review rubric. You'll understand the process of how proposals are reviewed. You'll be feeling confident and ready to go about your role in that process and doing the reviews yourself. We'll talk about the value of being a reviewer and what that can contribute to the conference as well as your own development. And we want to make sure you're leaving feeling encouraged, supported, and appreciated for your work as a reviewer today as well. So under the welcome and appreciation, I've already said this several times, but can't overemphasize this. The submitters and viewers are really what come together to make up, and the presenters, of course, what makes the conference happen, and anything you've ever wished to see at a conference. This is really where it all starts and where everything comes from. We had a record number of reviewers sign up to help part of the process this year, and we'll share those numbers a little later on. We're really excited to see that growth of the community coming together and be part of this process. Speaking of being part of the process, I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Catherine, now.
Yeah, so we just want to see how many of you have, oh, you've already all voted. That's great. That's pretty quick. It popped right up there. So it looks like, oh, it's still, okay, if everybody wants to input onto the poll so we can see how many people have reviewed for a Rook or Caucus before, it looks like we're leaning to many people have not reviewed before, but the numbers aren't that big. So it looks like it's about 10 people that are on this session have reviewed before and 17 have not. So it'll be a good review for those of you that have reviewed before, and hopefully we give you lots of good information for those of you that are new to reviewing. So thank you for filling in the poll. We'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so as Nicole mentioned, we did get a record number actually of proposals and reviewers this year. So the review process this year, we are going to be evaluating proposals that are 120, 60, and 30-minute sessions, and then a number of poster proposals. The pre-conference and big idea proposals are being reviewed by the Program Development Committee, and evaluated using a rubric very similar to the program review rubric. And the caucus and a Rook proposals will all be reviewed using the same system. This year, as you can see on the screen, we received 345 proposals, so as Nicole said, a record number of proposals and reviewers. We received 41 30-minute proposals, 259 60-minute proposals, 15 big ideas, 14 poster sessions, and 16 120-minute proposals. While the number of sessions is still being determined after the proposals are scored, approximately 65 to 70% of all of the proposals will be accepted. We do have 150 reviewers helping this year, so thank you very much for volunteering. Each reviewer, you would have received your assignments yesterday. Each reviewer will be assigned between 5 and 8 reviews, but most people did receive between 7 or 8. This number might be a little bit more than you'd received in the past if you're a returning reviewer, as each proposal this year is going to be reviewed by 3 reviewers instead of 2 to provide a more balanced average score and ensure the quality of our accepted proposals. Just to chat a little bit about the if there are any reviewer conflicts. So the reviews are blind, meaning that all fields in the proposal form with identifying information have been removed. So identifying information about the institution, the program, or the project. The system does not automatically check that the reviewer is not also a presenter, so we did do our best to manually go in and adjust this. But if you do find that there is a conflict for any reason on the proposals that you have been assigned, please send an email to events@caucus.ca and we'll reassign the proposal. So next we're just going to go through some of the timelines. So yesterday you should have received an email with your reviews. Obviously we're in the webinar right now. You have until February the 12th to complete your reviews. So February 12th at midnight. I'm going to assume that that also means midnight Vancouver time because I am in the Lower Mainland. So we'll say midnight PST, I hope, unless I get corrected by Alison. And you'll be able to edit all of your reviews up until that time. Oh, good, that is correct. Thank you. As reviews may need to be reassigned during the review period due to potential conflicts, you may receive additional reviews after today. We did receive a couple of emails yesterday about people who had conflicts or are unable to review. So please make sure that you check if you have had any additional reviews assigned to you. And also, if a reviewer doesn't complete their assigned reviews before the deadline, we'll also need to reassign those. If you happen to be interested in doing extra reviews for us during the period, please feel free to let us know. As I said, most people were assigned 7 or 8, but there are a handful of people that were assigned 5 or 6. So if you do want to review more, please feel free to email us, and we'd be happy to make that happen. I'm having an issue with some of these slides appearing cleanly. So this slide also seems to not be coming up properly, I don't think. So I'll read what is supposed to be on the slide. So the 4 tips for reviewers that should be, I'm sorry about this slide not appearing properly, but what the slide should say is use your resources, provide comments, take your time, and have fun. So we'll be discussing your resources and comments on the next few slides. But if on the Adobe Connect, if you want to take a look under the shared files and download the reviewer tip sheet and the program review rubric, we'll open those over the next couple of slides and go through those. But the one, while we're still on this slide, the about taking your time, we do recommend that you read each proposal at least twice. Read the full proposal before starting to score. Some folks like to read all of the proposals before starting to score, but just do what works best for you. As I mentioned before, you can make edits up until the deadline of February 12th. You can take your time. You could do one review a day, do multiple. Make sure that you schedule the time. February 12th is going to come up very quickly, so you may want to block off some time in your calendar to have a quiet, dedicated time to review. And past reviewers have spent anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes per proposal, so just work at a pace that is comfortable for you. And of course, we want you to have fun. You're getting a sneak peek at some of the amazing sessions we're going to be having at the conference. So try to just enjoy reviewing your proposals. So the next slide is where we're going to talk about the rubric. So if you want to, if you could please open up the program review rubric PDF. Is anybody having any problems downloading that file or opening it? If you wouldn't mind just making a comment that you're having an issue, but if, oh, there's some people are writing. Just want to make sure everybody can see it. All looks good. Sonia's typing something. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep chatting because my colleagues can help address any issues on the text boxes there. So the rubric you will be able to access through the tips reviewer sheet as well. But you really want to refer to the rubric. So we like to say it's your best friend during the review process. So you want to ensure that you're familiar with it, and if you get stuck, that you return to the probing questions in the rubric and score descriptions to guide you. The rubric is based on some of the learning outcomes and competency documents that Caucus has created in the past, so hopefully it is familiar. Are there any questions about the rubric? There's a number of comments coming about here. Nicole, is there anything you want to add about the rubric? I'm going to lean on you here to help me with this slide.
Thanks, Catherine. I think the only thing I would add is when Alison gives us a sneak peek of the system, you'll see that we now have comment boxes this year built into the review under each section of the rubric to kind of help you as you go along as a reviewer really critically look at your score for each section, each bullet point, and have an opportunity to comment and explain kind of your thought process of how you scored based on each area. So we'll be kind of walking through one section at a time throughout the rubric.
Perfect. Thank you, Nicole. So I'm going to move on to the next slide about providing feedback. So there are sections for you to provide feedback and also to give comments. We want to ensure that we're providing meaningful feedback. So if you take a look at the reviewer tip sheet, it's quite detailed, and we'll give you information on how to get started as a reviewer, and it'll also give you some specific comments towards the end of the document on pages 4 and 5. It talks about giving meaningful feedback. So some really good tips here. It is important to know that the feedback is can be seen by the individual who submitted the proposal. So that's just key to keep in mind when you're providing your feedback. So as I said, you want to always include comments. It'll help the presenter understand why they've received the score and also how to make improvements for this year or maybe for future submissions. So some of the examples of giving feedback, you want to be clear, concise, and specific, so avoid generalities. You want to make sure that you're more positive, provide constructive feedback, avoiding negative statements, focus on what they're doing rather than what you would do. acknowledge any bias where appropriate, be respectful, of course, explain why you feel a change would be helpful rather than offering how to improve. Be user-friendly, don't include jargon. We all work at different institutions and have different jargon, so we want to avoid using jargon in our feedback. Definitely use the rubric and also reflect as you write. And try to avoid using template statements that aren't specific. So that's some of the, again, I just recommend really going through that reviewer tip sheet. One place I will point out is that might be a little bit different this year is that in the comment boxes, we do also, if you look on the on page 2 of the tip sheet and you look down at, which one is it? Sorry, there, 3F. If you go down to 3F, we really want in the comments box to also have comments provided as to if and how the proposal addresses some of the calls to action in the call for programs. So for instance, how does the proposal see the possibility for change and innovation in our work? How does it critically reflect upon ourselves and the world around us? And how does it explore our shared responsibility to reconcile the historical injustices to Canada's Indigenous peoples? So if you want a little bit more reference on that, if you look at the message from the chairs of the conference, they have quite a detailed introduction, and they really mentioned that this year we want to ensure that each proposal addresses those 3 critical pieces as well. Are there any questions on that section about giving feedback or on the reviewer component? Or sorry, the rubric component?
We had a question in the chat box while you were going, Catherine, about whether comments are needed for every section. So thanks, Alison and Megan, for filling in. I'll just add, think about, we do encourage comments for each section. If you were Our presenters do receive a copy of the comments and the score. So think about from the submitter point of view, what sort of great feedback you can provide that's going to help that person both to understand where the score came from and how they can use that information to improve moving forward. So the comments are really important as part of the process from both sides in you helping to organize your thoughts and for the presenter to receive.
Oh, there's a question about where we find the message from the conference chairs. I will find the link and I'll put it in the comment box. Nicole, did you want to move on into your next sections?
Sure. So, sorry, trying to read the comments as we go along. So our next piece of today's webinar is a sneak peek at the tech side as promised. So at this point, I'm going to ask Alison to take the lead, who's going to do a screen share with us.
Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to show my screen with everyone. 1 second. Okay. So everything I'm going to outline in the next part of this webinar is outlined step by step in the reviewer tip sheet. But here is a demo when it's time and when you have an hour or so to start looking around the system. This is where you go. So we're working with a new reviewer system this year. It's called Open Conference. You'll follow this link also on the tip sheet. Scroll all the way to the bottom. This is the exact same form that you used to sign up as a reviewer. You'll go under Review and Program Committees and sign in. And today I'm going to sign in as Nicole. So I find that Open Conference saves my login. But if you have any issues, you can simply click forgot username or forgot password, sign in. So this is the next screen. This shows all of the reviews right at the top of the screen that you are assigned to. So right now it shows that Nicole is assigned 3 reviews. It's a red X, meaning that this is not completed yet. I encourage everyone to return back to this screen a few times in the next 2 weeks as we are constantly unassigning or reassigning depending on the feedback that we're getting from you as a reviewer. So it's important to continue to check in on this main screen, and it kind of gives you a summary as to what's on your radar for reviews this year. Please ignore submissions to Advocate. That is only applicable to the program committee this year. So for example, today we're going to walk through submission number 123, submitting a sea change presentation. Now in order to read the actual content for the review, I'm going to click on the abstract. So now this takes me to a screen, and everything I need in order to properly evaluate this proposal will be right here. So hopefully the submissions that you will read are a little more detailed than something like this, because I don't think my test proposal would go very far. But you're going to kind of take some time. I strongly recommend that you either copy and paste this into a Word document or keep the screen open and log in again so that you can kind of keep referencing all the parts of the submission. Try the back button. So when it's time to review, you feel that you've given yourself enough time to familiarize with the specific presentation you're looking to evaluate. You just click on the title itself, and it's going to pull up the review form. Now, this review form corresponds to the rubric that's also available for download, and it's going to ask you to break down the 6 assessment criteria. So it goes down from content all the way to relevance and significance and organization. So every time if I click for content, I feel that it's a 2 based on the rubric, I'm going to write comments in the box. And this is again based on giving meaningful and respectful feedback that the presenter can view once we send forth their comments and determine if they're going to present at the conference this year. All of these numbers here correspond to the assessment criteria on the rubric, and it automatically adds up the score as you go through. The average of 3 scores are used to determine the program this year. And I think Nicole will speak a little bit more to the decision-making process that we undergo at the end of February. But the form is pretty straightforward, simply matching the assigned rubric. And then at the end of the form, it asks your overall recommendation, along with another link to the program review rubric here. And then we wanted to also ask, again, your recommendation for the following competency appropriate to the session that you just reviewed. This is not used in determining whether the submission is accepted. It's simply used for categorizing all of the different proposals that are accepted when it comes time to stream the program and print all of the descriptions in the digital app in the program for all of our delegates. You can also email yourself a copy of the review, and it's very important when you're finished your review to click, I have completed the review. Press submit, and it's also, you'll see right here, it's not letting me confirm the review because I didn't fill out the recommendation field. You can't save this screen. It will time out after 60 minutes of inactivity, so we do ask that if you're committed to reviewing 1 proposal a day or however you manage your time, that you do dedicate at least the 30 minutes to 60 minutes, however long it takes to complete that 1 review. And then when you're ready to go, you can press submit. You can also resubmit your review until the deadline of February 12th at midnight PST. And after that deadline, all scores will be considered final. Beaver works this time. There we go. And then it lets me go back to it. So you do get another shot at editing the form should you need. All right. So I'm sure there's some questions about that.
Thank you very much, Alison, for that walkthrough. If there are any questions about the software specifically, we can take a moment here for those. Not seeing anything coming in. So if you do think of a question, we can go back to that before we finish up today. A couple folks typing. Okay, so let's keep going. We can come back to any questions as they come in, or if you think of something that you'd like us to go back to at the end of the group. So next up, I'm going to pass the floor to Karen.
I guess that taking it off mute would help before I started talking. So thank you. What I want to just share a little bit is a little bit less about the rubric and the process and more just a bit holistic perspective on the conference. So the Uruk Caucus Conference in 2018 is in Charlottetown, in case you didn't know that already. It spans the majority of the week of June 17th and provides us with the theme of sea change. So as we've mentioned several times, this conference is an exciting new opportunity for bringing together Uruk and Caucus into one conference. The coming together of Caucus and Uruk has been several years in the development, driven by the desire to broaden our scope of reflection, learning, and development of best practices in delivering supports to our students. So this is the first time these organizations will formally come together to share their common interests, learn from research and innovative practices, and to collaborate and build partnerships between members and external stakeholders. So while the theme Sea Change is not part of their rubric, it is a fun way to inspire both presenters and participants. The conference team wanted to highlight the parallels that can be drawn between the student experience and the process glass undergoes when becoming sea glass. So students, like glass, are experiencing a new environment. They begin tossing and swirling and bumping against obstacles, refining and becoming more resilient, until finally becoming a stronger, unique gem. We all see that in our daily work, certainly on our campuses. So as part of this process, we've already seen change, get it, see change, in several ways. Our commitment to bettering ourselves, the way we are developing and implementing competencies to further refine and define our professions, and our commitment to respond to the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Report. And from what I've seen and heard about this conference so far, I think you'll see all of those coming together in the conference. So during your submission review, you will note that there's a wide variety of session types. As part of the Sea Change theme, the committee sought opportunities for presenters to use the best format to showcase their topic. So I believe we've already talked a little bit about the session types that have been submitted. And so I would encourage you to keep an open mind to those as you're doing your reviews. Some of them you may not have experienced before. So the creativity of the conference doesn't end there. For those who want to use every moment of the conference to their advantage, I encourage you to take a look at the social excursions. I don't think it's possible to go to the East Coast without some kind of lobster fest, and so certainly you'll see that in there, as well as walks on the beach, culinary tools, closing banquet, and golf. So I encourage you, if you are attending or not, to take a look at what's going on at the conference, to be able to encourage others to participate, or maybe to encourage you to come and attend as well. All right. Were we going to do a poll? I don't know how to do the poll. There we are. So you'll see, oh, excellent. We're leaning towards attending, which is a fabulous outcome. Maybe the Lobster Fest is supporting some of that change. Heather wants some lobster. That's great. All right. So why don't we move on to Nicole to talk about the decision-making process.
Great, thank you very much, Karen. Got our slides caught up here with us. So I'll just finish up this last little piece and then we'll return back to, I know there's a couple of questions sitting there in the chat as well. So once you finish your scores, you might be wondering kind of where does that information go and what happens next. So the program review committee will take all of that information and we will do a analysis then of all the different scores that all the proposals have received, and then from there establish a cutoff that will help us with the kind of target percentage. When we're making the final decisions or our recommendations up to the larger program committee of our decisions, we'll be primarily looking at the scores, but we're also going to be taking a look at some of the logistical pieces, so the time slots that are available. So there could be, we can only accept so many poster or 30-minute or 60-minute or 120 sessions. So we have some logistical things to think about. We also want to make sure that we're creating a conference program that is relevant to our diverse population. So with our partnership between Arook and Caucus this year, we'll be paying special attention to making sure there's a balance of content for folks from both organizations. We'll also be paying attention to the target audience indicated in the proposal, in particular, for example, senior student affairs officers, ensuring there's a little bit of content for all. We'll also be looking at the different topics that the proposals that are being accepted are covering, and that will be through the subject areas that people have identified as well as the different competencies being covered. We'll be looking at college and university content as part of that target audience piece as well. And then that call to action piece that my colleagues have mentioned. So we do have a mandate as part of this year's conference around the indigenization and that critical discourse. So we will be trying to take a look at that piece as we move forward as well. So all those factors kind of go in mind to put together the final program. We wanted to kind of let you know what will happen for next steps. Okay, so as we said at the beginning of today's session, we're hoping that the sections we've just covered with you have helped you to become more familiar with the resources, and particularly the rubric, the tip sheet, ourselves, Alison, as well as the members of the program committee, and the technology piece available, that you're feeling a little more familiar and comfortable with the rubric, that you understand the process around how proposals are reviewed, that you're feeling a little more confident about going in there and getting your review started, that you're feeling excited, encouraged, supported, and valued as part of this process as well. So as we wrap up, if there's anything we haven't covered to help us achieve these outcomes, we'd love to open up to conversation now. So we can take comments through the chat box, or you can also unmute your line at this time if you prefer to ask a question verbally. not seeing any new questions coming in. Try and keep our conversation going for a minute here if there's anyone else typing. Definitely welcome any conversation. We have a little bit of time together as a group.
It's Alison here. One last tip. If you are thinking of coming to Charlottetown, I do strongly recommend that you book your accommodations now. We are seeing hotel space fill up quite quickly at some of the properties we've reserved. So if you visit caucus.ca/conference, you can click on the Getting There tab. It describes all of the hotels and residence accommodations available to you. And of course, there's plenty outside of our conference room block, but it's just something to think about now as you prepare for your travels in June.
Thanks, Alison, for that little. Now you have an insider PEI tip here. We're getting a question about the number of proposals that will be accepted. So we don't have an exact number for you today. As we said, there's a lot of different factors that we consider. So we will look at what the scores are showing us first and then kind of work to match that with the logistics. So there is a little bit of flexibility in that regard, to try to honor the proposals coming through. We're also getting a question about sessions changing format. We can bring that back to the program committee. We have not discussed that as a policy to date. So the question was around perhaps allowing folks to change their session to another format, such as a poster that had fewer submissions. We have not done that as a policy in recent years, but we can definitely bring that back to the group for conversation if there's interest in that from the community. We're also getting a question, see if I understand your question, about comparing proposals to each other for the same themed areas. I'm sorry, Catherine, I don't know if I fully understand your question, or someone else on my team would like to jump in. Thanks, Gladys. So we have a question around requirements for accessibility. So we are working to provide presenters with information around how to make their sessions more accessible as well as overall inclusive. And that'll be one of the focus working with presenters once our submissions have been accepted. So there will be minimum requirements to help make that happen, and then we'll help work with folks to bring that above and beyond as much as possible. See some more vigorous typing happen here, so we're just waiting for questions to appear.
Alison, again, just another comment. We are planning on facilitating a webinar in the spring, in mid-April, for those accepted to present at this year's conference. And addressing minimum accessibility requirements is a huge part of that webinar. We have an accessibility subcommittee designed from the host team, and they're working away at resources for presenters as well. So it is certainly something that we address and take very seriously for all those who are accepted to present.
Thanks for clarifying, Catherine. So the question is, in using the rubric, should we be comparing between proposals? So my initial answer is to compare primarily against the rubric. I think we all inherently, once we've read a few proposals, kind of have them in mind. And so I know in the past I've potentially went back and reread some proposals that I scored first after I had been through and had a better feel for what I was reading when I was reviewing multiple. But the rubric should be your main assessment piece. Do you have any more questions for today for anyone on the team? Everyone's excited to go out and do the reviews, ready to go? Thanks, Bob. I think the who said he's looking forward to reading the proposals. I know that is definitely my favorite part of this whole process, getting that chance to go in and see all the different ideas coming in from across Canada and what everyone's working on, getting that little sneak peek at what's happening within the field. Are there any last questions that someone's been thinking about would like to put out to the group before we wrap up today? Okay, I'm not seeing any more typing happening, so that might be a wrap. Is there anyone else on my team who'd like to add some closing words before we end off?
Just looking forward to everybody's hard work and seeing everybody in June. It's going to be a great conference. And thank you to everybody for volunteering their time for this important work.
Okay, so as we wrap up, I will echo those thank you. A reminder that your review deadline is February 12th and that you can go in and edit between now and then. That a copy of this webinar as well as the documents are available to you online. So if you have any questions about accessing the resources. Alison, as always, is a great resource. You can always email in any questions and Alison or one of us on the review team will get back to you and help you out. So anything that you think of after today, we're still here to help. So you're never alone. And have fun as people are talking about the privilege of seeing the reviews. So enjoy the process, enjoy reading, and we want to thank you again, and we wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.